No. It's not my son, David Miller said, the words flat, final. He held the newborn at arm's length as if the tiny body burned him. Take it away. Nurse Elena Frost froze mid-step. Mr. Miller, please. Don't call me that. He turned toward the window, rain streaking down the glass. I don't want it. Do you hear me? I don't care what the doctor says about differences. It's not mine. Elena looked at the baby, whose cry was barely more than breath. She's healthy, she whispered. She's alive. David's eyes were stone. Then let someone else deal with her life. He placed the infant back on the cot, turned and walked out. The door clicked shut. The echo lingered longer than his footsteps. Hours earlier, the room had been full of light and hope. Dr. Alan Reeves had smiled as he lifted the crying newborn into the world, until the chart in his hands made him hesitate. The numbers were fine, the heartbeat strong, but one small note changed the air in the room. He hesitated too long. David noticed. What? The father demanded. Reeves cleared his throat. Your child is healthy. Absolutely healthy. But there are some physical variations, nothing dangerous. It happens sometimes. David frowned. Variations. Lydia, exhausted on the bed, forced a smile. Boy or girl? Reeves hesitated again. Right now we classify as female. But David's face drained of color. Stop. Just stop. You're saying my child isn't normal. She's perfectly normal, Reeves said gently. Just born different. It's rare but not. Fix it. There's nothing to fix, the doctor answered quietly. She's healthy. David turned to his wife. You hearing this? People will talk. We'll be pitted. Lydia bit her lip. David. He cut her off. I won't raise a freak. Reeves flinched. Elena, standing near the incubator, gathered the baby closer. She's just a child. David's glare snapped to her. Then you raise it. By nightfall he was gone. The hospital lights dimmed, machines hummed, and Lydia sat motionless, staring at the floor until finally she whispered, I can't do this alone. When Elena looked up again, the mother was slipping out of the ward, eyes red, purse clutched like an anchor. At midnight Elena went to check the newborn. The crib was empty. Panic cracked her voice as she searched every corner of the nursery. In the service corridor, the door to the loading bay was ajar. Cold air swept in, carrying the smell of rain and diesel. Outside, under the pale glow of a streetlight, a man in a torn coat was rummaging through bins for bottles. He stopped when he heard the soft cry. First he thought it was a cat. Then he saw the blanket. Well, look at that, he muttered. Somebody tossed you out early. The man was Raymond Pike, a scavenger who haunted the alleys around the hospital. He crouched, staring at the small bundle shivering inside the cardboard box. Don't cry, kid. Crying don't change much. Elena burst through the doorway. Sir. Leave that baby. Raymond straightened, rain dripping from his sleeves. I ain't hurting him. He nodded at the box. You people dropped him. No one dropped him. He belongs inside. She reached forward. Raymond hesitated. He'd seen too many things thrown away. Food, clothes, hope, but never life. His fingers tightened around the blanket. He'll just end up in a system that don't care. I know how that ends. Elena's voice softened. Please. Let me help him. Raymond studied her face. The clean uniform, the tired eyes, and something inside him stirred. An old memory of kindness long gone. He slowly handed the baby over. Elena pressed the child to her chest. Thank you, she breathed. Raymond shrugged. Don't thank me. Just keep him alive. She nodded, but when she turned to signal security, he was already gone into the storm. Back inside, Elena warmed the baby under a lamp, whispering, You were born into noise and lightning, little one. But you're still here. She filled out a temporary intake form. Foundling, male, unidentified. On the line marked given name she paused, pen hovering. Tori, she wrote, because tomorrow had to mean something. By dawn the paperwork vanished. The night staff changed shifts. One file slipped through the cracks. When Elena returned from rounds, the crib was empty again. Security swore they saw nothing. The cameras near the bay door flickered once at 3:17 a.m., a shadow of a man carrying a small bundle under his coat. Raymond Pike pushed his cart through the rain. the city still half asleep. Inside his coat the baby stirred. He stopped beneath a bridge, breath clouding in the cold. "You got a name yet?" he asked. The infant's tiny fingers caught his sleeve. He gave a short, bitter laugh. "Guess not. All right, tomorrow. That's what I'll call you." The wind howled down the tunnel and he began to hum. A broken tune no one remembered. Somewhere behind him sirens wailed, searching for a child already gone. Tomorrow slept through the noise. And in the city that never stopped moving, a discarded heartbeat found its first home. Morning in the underpass came with the rattle of bottles and the growl of trucks above. Raymond Pike rose stiffly from his cardboard bed and shook the chill from his coat. The baby in the crate beside him blinked up, calm as a stray cat. "Still breathing," he muttered. "Guess we made it through another night." Years slipped past inside that single sentence. The baby became a boy called Tori, named for a day that never quite arrived. Raymond dragged his cart through the same streets, and the boy learned every corner of New York that smelled of rust, coffee, and rain. They begged by traffic lights outside the subway, near bakeries that threw away bread at dusk. "Smile," Raymond said. "People give more when you look grateful." Tori smiled until it hurt. At first the man fed him, kept him warm, even sang rough lullabies when storms flooded the tunnels. But kindness in Raymond never lasted long. Drink wore it away. The bottles grew heavier in his cart, and each one bought him a shorter temper. By 7, Tori understood that love and survival were not the same thing. Love was soft. Survival had edges. Every evening Raymond counted coins into piles, guarding them like secrets. "This is for rent when we get a room," he'd say, though they never did. When he was drunk the promise changed. "It's for me. I found you. You owe me." Tori would nod, head low. Owing was safer than arguing. Sometimes people stopped to ask about the boy. "Where's your mother? You should be in school." Raymond's hand always tightened on Tori's shoulder. "He's mine," he'd say, eyes daring anyone to disagree. The lie worked. Pity moved faster than truth. They ate because of it. One winter night the temperature dropped so fast the river steamed. Raymond forced Tori to keep begging long after the streets emptied. "We don't quit early," he said, shaking an empty cup. "Quitting's how you starve." The boy's fingers turned white. He could barely feel the coins that fell into his palm. A police officer finally stopped, kneeling to his level. "Son, where's your home?" Raymond answered for him. "Right here." The officer looked at Tori's shivering frame, then at Raymond's bloodshot eyes and sighed. "Get that kid indoors." Raymond nodded, smiling until the cruiser drove off. Then the smile vanished. "You see what you did? They take kids who talk too much." "I didn't say anything," Tori whispered. "Better keep it that way." That night, back under the bridge, Raymond stared at the boy through the smoke of his fire. "You don't understand how lucky you are," he said. "World threw you away. I picked you up." Tori met his eyes for the first time. "Then why do you hate me?" Raymond blinked, the question slicing through his fog. For a moment he looked almost sorry. Then he turned over, muttering, "Go to sleep." Tori didn't. He lay awake listening to the river slap the pillars, wondering if the sound was trying to tell him something. By 8 he could run errands, fetch scraps, return bottles. Raymond called it training. "Every man needs a trade," he said, handing Tori a rusted can. "Ours is survival." The trade paid in bruises and lessons. Tori learned which store owners chased them off and which tossed food his way. He learned to read the weight of footsteps behind him, to vanish when danger smelled close. Raymond's mood swung like the weather, praise at dawn, fury by dusk. One afternoon, after hours of begging, Tori slipped the day's coins into his pocket instead of the jar. He wanted to buy bread on his own. When Raymond noticed, the storm came fast. "You stealing from me now?" "I just wanted to eat." The man's fist never landed. The rage burned itself out before it found a target. Raymond turned away, coughing. "You think I like this life? I'm doing what I have to." Tori pressed the coins into his hand. "Then we're the same." Raymond looked at him strangely. "Maybe you are," he said, voice cracking. "Maybe that's the curse." After that night, something changed between them. The man grew quieter, more watchful. Tori caught him studying him in the half-light. An expression he couldn't name, Part fear, part confusion, part something darker. You're growing up, Raymond said one morning. People look at you different now. We gotta be careful. Tori felt a chill he couldn't explain. Careful of what? Raymond didn't answer. He just stared, jaw tight, eyes unreadable. The silence between them stretched like wire. When evening fell, they returned to their spot outside the station. Raymond counted coins. Tori watched headlights slide across his face. In those brief flashes he saw the man he owed and the stranger he feared. He wondered which one would last longer. That winter, an early snow blanketed the city. Tori woke to find Raymond coughing blood into his hands. Don't look, the man growled. It's nothing. But the coughs kept coming. For 3 days they barely moved from the bridge. On the 4th, Raymond forced himself upright. We work, he said. We always work. Tori followed silently. By dusk the man collapsed beside his cart, spent. For a long time he lay still, the city moving around them. Then his eyes opened, glassy and full of something like regret. Tomorrow, he whispered. Don't end up like me. Tori waited for more, but Raymond's breath evened into sleep. Somewhere in that fragile rhythm, the boy heard the truth. He was alone even when someone was beside him. Snowflakes gathered on the rim of the tin cup, melting into tiny silver pools. He lifted the cup, stared at his reflection wavering in the water and whispered, Someday I'll buy my own tomorrow. Above the bridge the city lights flickered on, one by one, indifferent and endless. The city raised him harder than any parent could. By 10 Tori already knew every sound of danger, the rattle of police radios, the scrape of a drunk's shoes on wet pavement, the sudden hush before a shout. Raymond called those lessons. The world teaches you, kid. You just better be smart enough to learn. Days began before sunrise. Raymond shook him awake, handed him the dented cup, and pointed toward the subway stairs. Smile, look small, look hungry. Coins fell faster when Tori's eyes stayed soft. He learned to fake innocence so well that sometimes he forgot where the act ended. At night they shared a single blanket under the bridge. The cold bit through their layers, but Raymond's rules were worse than the wind. Don't talk to cops. Don't take food unless I say. Don't think anyone's your friend. Each rule built a wall around the boy. When he was 11, the first real fight happened. A stranger tossed a sandwich to Tori. Raymond snatched it away. You don't eat what ain't yours. But he gave it to me. Nothing's free, Raymond snapped, hurling it into the river. The splash echoed longer than their argument. That night Tori whispered into the dark. Maybe nothing's free, but not everything's yours either. Raymond didn't answer. The man's snores rolled through the tunnel, heavy and broken. By 12, Tori's shoulders had squared. He could run faster than most grown men and vanish between cars before anyone grabbed him. Raymond began sending him alone to collect bottles from uptown dumpsters. Freedom tasted like rotten tin, but it was freedom all the same. On those walks Tori met faces that didn't belong to the streets. Clerks, janitors, kids in uniforms. He studied them the way he used to study clouds, trying to guess what it felt like to be clean every morning. Once he watched a boy his age buying coffee for his mother. Their laughter hit him harder than hunger. He kept the memory tucked like a stolen coin. Raymond's health sank with the years. His cough turned to wheeze, his hands shook, but his eyes stayed sharp. Don't pity me, he warned. I ain't dead yet. Tori wanted to believe him. Despite the anger, despite the rules, the man was the only constant the world had given him. Love and hate blurred until they meant the same thing. One spring evening, after a long day of begging, Raymond didn't return to their spot. Panic drove Tori through the alleys until he found him slumped behind a diner. Too weak to move. They won't help me, Raymond rasped. Hospitals ask questions. I'll get someone, Tori said. You'll get yourself taken, the man coughed. You stay. So Tori stayed, feeding him broth stolen from the back door, waiting for a miracle that never came. Each night the city hummed above them, alive and oblivious. Raymond recovered enough to stand but not enough to work. From then on the boy begged for both. He carried double weight, the cup and the guilt. When strangers asked, "Where's your father?" Tori always answered, "Resting." The lie kept pity flowing and pride intact. Months later, a city outreach van stopped beneath the bridge. A woman in a red jacket called out, Anyone here need a warm meal? Tori froze. Raymond hissed. Stay still. But curiosity overruled fear. Tori stepped into the light. The woman smiled. What's your name? He hesitated. Tori. She handed him a sandwich and a card with an address. If you ever want school or a bed, come here. When she drove away, Raymond snatched the card and tore it. They want to own you. They want to help, Tori said quietly. Same thing. He threw the pieces into the fire barrel. No one owns tomorrow but me. That was the night Tori stopped calling him Ray. In his mind, the man's name became Pike. Something hard and sharp, not family. By 13, the streets had begun whispering his own legend. The quiet kid who never begged twice in the same place, who could read faces like signs. Some nights he even guarded other runaways from drunks, earning scraps of respect that felt larger than food. But pride was expensive. One evening Pike caught him sharing coins with another kid. The old fury returned in a flash. You think you can play hero? You forget who made you. Tori stood his ground. You didn't make me. You just found me. For a second Pike looked ready to strike. Then the weight of years dragged his hand down. You talk like you know something, he muttered. Keep it up. The world'll break you faster than I ever could. I'm already broken, Tori said. They didn't speak for 2 days. On the third night, Pike's cough turned bloody again. Between spasms he whispered, Don't ever end up alone, kid. It's louder than you think. Then he rolled away, leaving the warning hanging in the dark. Tori stared at the city skyline beyond the bridge. He thought of the torn card, the shelter woman's smile, the life that might exist past the river. Each light in those windows looked like a choice he hadn't made yet. By the time dawn came, he decided one thing. Survival was no longer enough. He wanted a reason. That reason arrived in the smallest form. A cracked mirror someone tossed out near the station. He picked it up, wiped the grime, and saw a face he didn't recognize. It wasn't the baby Raymond had found or the beggar's helper he'd become. It was someone else, someone still forming. He didn't know it yet, but that reflection would soon change everything. For now, he set the mirror beside the fire and whispered to it, Tomorrow, don't look away. The city answered with a siren far off in the night, a sound like warning and promise combined. Spring crept into the city quietly, softening the edges of winter's scars. Beneath the bridge, melted snow dripped through cracks and struck tin cans in slow rhythm, like a clock counting down to something neither of them could name. Tori sat near the fire barrel polishing a scrap of mirror he had found in a trash heap. It was no bigger than his hand, yet it held a world large enough for questions. Pike coughed himself awake. You staring at that thing again? He rasped. Tori nodded. It helps me remember I exist. Mirrors lie, Pike said, reaching for his bottle. They show what light wants you to see, not what you are. Tori studied his reflection, the same narrow face, the same eyes that never matched the voice inside. Maybe that's the point, he murmured. Maybe what I am isn't just what people see. Pike grunted. People see what feeds them. You keep talking like that, you'll go hungry. But hunger wasn't the ache that haunted Tori anymore. It was the feeling of standing between two winds, one whispering boy, the other something he didn't yet have a name for. On the streets, strangers labeled him whichever way they pleased. Each label felt like a coat that didn't fit. Later that day, he followed Pike downtown to a new begging spot outside a pharmacy. While Pike shouted at pedestrians, Tori watched a mother guiding her child by the hand. The kid looked up and asked, Mom, is that a boy or a girl? The woman shushed him, dropped a coin, and walked away. Tori's ears burned. The question echoed louder than traffic. That night he couldn't sleep. He pulled the mirror from his pocket, letting the streetlight slice his reflection in half. Maybe I'm both, he whispered. Or neither. The next morning Pike noticed the sleepless eyes. You sick? Just thinking. About what? About why everyone needs to know what I am before they decide how to treat me. Pike frowned, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. You want a reason? People hate puzzles. Makes him feel small. So they smash the pieces till something fits. Tori looked at him. Did the world smash you too? The old man laughed without humor. Kid, the world built me out of what it smashed. They didn't speak for hours. Tori worked their corner in silence. repeating the words people hate puzzles until they sounded like a threat. When a group of teenagers passed, one of them mocked his voice, another tossed a coin that bounced off his shoe. Pike grabbed the coin before Tori could move. "Money's money," he said. Tori stared at him. "Some things you shouldn't take. Pride don't feed you." That night Tori didn't return to the bridge immediately. He wandered the riverbank, thoughts churning faster than the current. In a puddle he saw his reflection flicker between shapes. A trick of light, a truth in disguise. He whispered to the water, "If I ever figure it out, I'll never hide again." A week later a volunteer team visited the bridge, handing out blankets and pamphlets. One woman knelt beside Tori. "You look familiar," she said. "Were you at the shelter years ago?" He shook his head. "Maybe someone else." She smiled. "We help kids who feel caught between homes, between ideas of themselves. You could come talk." The phrase "caught between" struck him like a secret spelled aloud. He pocketed the card she offered and said nothing to Pike. The old man grew suspicious anyway. Who was she? Just a helper. Helpers want something. Don't trust it. But the more Pike warned him, the stronger the pull became. The pamphlet talked about people who found peace by naming themselves. He didn't know if he belonged among them, yet the possibility glowed like a window left open. One evening he asked softly, "What if I'm not who you think I am?" Pike glanced up from his fire. "You think that changes anything? Maybe it changes everything." The old man's eyes, once sharp, softened for the first time in years. "Tomorrow," he said, using the name he'd given the baby he'd found, "you can call yourself whatever you want. Just don't forget who kept you alive long enough to do it." "I won't," Tori promised, though he knew the debt was already fading. When Pike slept, Tori took the card from his pocket and traced the address, 18th Street Community Center. He imagined walking through its door, telling someone the truth he barely understood. Fear and hope wrestled inside him until dawn. The next day, while searching a dumpster for cans, he found a discarded shop window pane. It reflected both him and the skyline behind, two images superimposed, impossible to separate. He laughed quietly. "Guess that's me," he said. That night he told the mirror's last remaining shard. "Maybe there isn't a right answer. Maybe being different is the answer." The wind answered with a gust that scattered their fire's ashes across the concrete. Each glowing ember looked like a star falling just out of reach. He lay awake until the city lights dimmed, whispering a vow to the dark. "Someday I'll step into the world as whoever I am, and no one will throw me away again." Above the bridge, morning crept in pink and silver, painting the graffiti gold. Tori closed his eyes, unaware that his next sunrise would come miles away, running for his life. The first sign came with the bottles. Raymond Pike had always drunk too much, but lately every empty clink sounded sharper, meaner, like a clock ticking toward something inevitable. The bridge no longer felt like shelter. It felt like a cage lined with glass. Tori noticed it in the way Pike watched him. Less like a guardian, more like a guard. The old man's cough had deepened into a growl, and with it came suspicion. "You talked to those volunteers again?" he asked one night. "No. Don't lie to me tomorrow. I see things." Tori turned away. "You see ghosts." Silence, then a slap of the bottle against concrete. "You think you're better than me now? Reading those papers, dreaming your fancy dreams. I just want something different." "There ain't different for people like us," Pike said. "There's only surviving or starving." He stumbled toward the river to refill his bottle with water, leaving Tori staring at the fire's dying glow. The flames bent in the wind, casting warped shadows on the walls. His and Pike's shapes tangled like an argument that had no language left. That night Tori dreamed he was still an infant in the box, but this time it was Pike's voice shouting over the storm. "I saved you. You belong to me." He woke before dawn, heart racing, knowing the dream was half memory. Morning brought fog and another fight. Pike demanded all the coins from the day before. "You hiding money now?" "I used it for food," Tori said. "Food?" The old man's laugh was hollow. "You don't eat without me saying so." He lunged for the small pouch at Tori's belt. Instinct took over. Tori stepped back, knocking over the barrel. Sparks leapt upward and died. For a moment they faced each other through the smoke, Old and young, captor and captive. Pike's voice dropped to a whisper. You run, and the world will eat you alive. Then I'll find out what it tastes like, Tori said. He grabbed his coat and bolted. Pike's shout chased him into daylight, but fear lent wings to his feet. He tore through the maze of alleys, past graffiti and steam vents, until the bridge vanished behind buildings. The city opened wide, enormous and unfamiliar. The sun was climbing, painting windows gold. Freedom looked beautiful and terrifying. He ducked into a subway entrance, paid with a stolen coin, and rode without knowing where the train would stop. Across from him, a woman cradled a baby. Tori couldn't look away. He wondered if someone had once held him like that, even for a minute. When she smiled, he turned his face to the window and pretended to sleep. The train ended in Midtown. Crowds spilled out. He followed the smell of food until he found a narrow diner with a help wanted sign taped to the door. The manager, a thick-shouldered man named Frank Hollis, looked him up and down. You legal to work? Not yet, Tori said. But I can clean, wash dishes, whatever you need. Frank snorted. Cash only, no questions. Deal. Deal. For the first time in years Tori had a roof, even if it was the diner's storage closet and a blanket on the floor. He worked from sunrise until the last customer left, scrubbing pans until his fingers split. The pain felt honest. Each blister was proof he existed on his own terms. Weeks passed. He learned the rhythm of clattering plates, the hiss of fryers, the laughter of strangers who could afford breakfast. At night he studied discarded newspapers, tracing letters with a pencil stub. He began to think maybe, just maybe, he had escaped the gravity of Pike's shadow. But freedom in the city always demanded rent. Frank's temper was quick, his greed quicker. You owe me hours, he'd bark. You eat my food, you stay late. Tori obeyed. Obedience was a habit he couldn't yet unlearn. One evening a customer left a tip directly in Tori's hand instead of the jar. Frank saw it and snapped. All money goes through me. It was for me. You work for me. Everything you have is because of me. The word struck like déjà vu, the same sentence, a different voice. Pike's ghost returned in the man's face. Something inside Tori cracked. I don't belong to anyone, he said. Frank grabbed his wrist. What did you say? I said I'm done. The struggle was fast and clumsy. A pan crashed, someone shouted, and Frank slipped on the spilled grease, landing hard. The noise brought others running. He attacked me, the manager yelled, pointing at Tori. Within minutes police lights flashed through the windows. No one asked questions. They saw a runaway and a bleeding man. Tori tried to explain, but his words drowned under sirens. At the station he gave his name, no address. The officer sighed. Another kid without papers. Juvenile holding till we find somewhere to stick you. They drove him across the bridge to a gray facility surrounded by wire and floodlights. As the gate clanged shut, the officer said, Keep your head down and your hands clean. You'll be fine. Inside, boys his age jostled for beds. Loud voices hiding quiet terror. A guard handed him a uniform. New kid. Don't cause problems. That night, lying on the thin mattress, he thought of Pike's last words. The world will eat you alive. Maybe it already had. But he'd escaped the worst of it, and that meant something. Through the barred window he could see the faint glow of the city he'd fled, the skyline flickering like a heartbeat. He touched the glass, whispering, You can't cage tomorrow. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled over the river. He closed his eyes and imagined it washing everything clean. The bridge, the diner, the lies. For the first time in his life, the sound of a locked door didn't mean the end of freedom. It meant the beginning of his own. The sound of metal doors closing became Tori's new heartbeat. Every clang marked another second of a life he didn't choose. Juvenile detention smelled of bleach and rust, a place built to scrub people clean by force. He learned the rules fast. Don't look too long at anyone. Don't ask questions. Never show fear. The first week he spoke only when spoken to. The guards liked that. The other boys didn't. At lunch one afternoon a tall inmate named Rico kicked his chair out from under him. New kid thinks he's better than us. Tori picked himself up. I think I'm tired. Laughter rippled through the room. The guard barked, Sit down. And everything reset except the promise in Rico's eyes, later. Later came often. Shoves in the corridor, Names whispered to test which one would sting. Tori never rose to it. He saved his strength for the only thing that made sense, books. Mr. Daniels, the counselor, slipped him novels from the small library. You keep reading, he said. Knowledge hits harder than fists. Weeks turned into months. Tori grew stronger, quieter, and something in his silence unnerved the others. He began tutoring a few boys who couldn't read. Even Rico showed up once, pretending he'd just wandered in. For a while peace seemed possible. Then winter arrived and took it back. A new guard replaced the old shift captain. A man named Harris, square jaw, short temper. He didn't like smart kids. During inspection he found one of Tori's hidden books. What's this? Reading assignments, sir. Don't lie. You think you're better than the rest. No, sir. Harris tore the pages out one by one, dropping them in a bucket of mop water. Now you're equal. Something inside Tori cracked. He didn't shout or cry. He simply bent, lifted the dripping pages and said, You can't erase what I already learned. Harris's eyes narrowed. Watch your mouth. That night the tension snapped. Rico and two others cornered him in the laundry room, laughing like they'd planned it for weeks. Hero boy thinks he can talk back to guards, Rico said. Let's see if he talks back to us. They shoved him against the wall. The air smelled of soap and iron. Tori's mind flashed to Pike, to Frank, to every hand that had tried to keep him small. Not again. He ducked the next swing and ran for the door, but another boy blocked it. The struggle was desperate, clumsy, full of panic. A shelf tipped. A mop handle struck someone's head. When the noise stopped, one boy lay still, others frozen. Tori stood there trembling, the broken handle slick with water and detergent. Get help, he whispered. Nobody moved. Guards stormed in seconds later, shouting orders. Hands pulled him to the floor, cuffs clicked shut. Rico sat against the wall clutching his arm, blood seeping through his sleeve. The third boy didn't move at all. Tori tried to speak, to explain, but the words tangled with shock. I didn't mean. Save it, a guard snapped. You'll talk to the warden. Hours later he sat in a gray office under fluorescent light. Mr. Daniels looked at him with something between pity and pride. Tell me what happened. They came for me. I just wanted to leave. Did you hit him? I swung at the air. Daniels sighed. Sometimes the air hits back. The report called it self-defense in a riot. No charges, but the cost was carved inside him. The boy who'd fallen wasn't dead, but he might not walk right again. Tori replayed the moment for nights afterward, hearing the crack of wood, feeling it vibrate through his bones. He washed his hands over and over until the skin peeled, yet the echo stayed. The others gave him space after that. They called him Ghost. He didn't fight the name. Ghosts were left alone. Daniels kept visiting. You did what you had to do, he said. That doesn't make you bad. I still hurt someone. Survival leaves marks on both sides. What matters is what you do with them. Tori began writing instead of reading, short lines on scraps of paper. He wrote about the river, the bridge, the mirror, the day he ran. Words became his confession and his cure. Daniels smuggled in a notebook. Fill it, he said. Then start another. Months passed. Behavior reports improved. When parole review came, Daniels argued his case. He's not violent, he told the board. He's awake. The board agreed. Spring returned and the gates opened once more. Outside, the air felt heavier, real. Tori walked past the fence with a single bag, the notebook, a few clothes, and the shard of mirror wrapped in cloth. At the bus stop he sat watching the traffic blur into silver streaks. In the window he saw his reflection overlay the city like two transparencies, past and future. He whispered, blood washes but memory doesn't. A woman beside him asked, You talking to yourself? He smiled faintly. Talking to tomorrow. When the bus came he didn't look back. The prison lights dwindled to sparks behind him, the same color as those long ago embers under the bridge. He had crossed another border. Not between walls but between who he had been and who he was becoming. Guilt would follow but so would purpose. And somewhere inside that balance waited the man he was meant to be. As the bus rolled over the bridge, dawn split the clouds open like a wound healing from the inside out. Tori pressed his hand against the glass and whispered, I'm still here. The bus ride out of juvenile detention didn't end in freedom. It ended at a gate higher and colder than anything Tori had ever seen. The sign read State Correctional Facility. Adult intake. His 18th birthday was 2 days away. The system had been waiting for him. The guard who escorted him off the bus spoke without looking up. Welcome to the real world, kid. Keep your head down. The air smelled of rain and disinfectant. Inside the processing room was an assembly line of lost identities. Clothes off, number on, hair shaved. By the time they handed him his uniform, he felt hollowed out. His name meant nothing here. He was inmate 4047. The first night was a war of noises, metal doors, boots on concrete, voices calling names that weren't theirs anymore. His cellmate, a wiry man named Calder, watched him with suspicion. First time. Tori nodded. You'll learn, Calder said. Everybody does, or they don't last. Learning meant endurance. The days began with alarms and ended with silence sharp enough to cut. The prison routine was clockwork. Stand, count, work, eat, count again. Tori scrubbed kitchen trays until his hands cracked. Every small rule had a punishment. Every kindness had a price. The first lesson came fast. In the chow line, a larger inmate shoved him aside. You think you get to eat first, pretty boy? The nickname spread before he swallowed his first bite. Pretty boy. Half insult, half invitation, all danger. He tried ignoring it. Ignoring became weakness. When one man grabbed his collar in the yard, Tori reacted before fear could stop him. A single punch, quick, clean. The guards pulled them apart, but after that, the others left him mostly alone. Respect in prison wasn't earned by smiles. It was bought with defiance. At night he wrote in the notebook Mr. Daniels had given him. Words were the only things that didn't have bars. I am not what they call me. I am what I build, he wrote. Each sentence was a brick in a wall of his own making. One that kept the darkness out. Months blurred into a calendar he didn't mark. Calder was transferred. Another inmate replaced him, then another. Tori learned to live with transients. He helped older prisoners read letters, fix broken radios in exchange for paper. The guards began to notice the quiet one who never caused trouble. One morning a counselor visited his cell. You applied for the education program? Yes, Tori said. Why? Because I'm tired of surviving. I want to learn how to live. The counselor smiled faintly. Good answer. You start next week. Classroom hours became oxygen. For the first time he sat behind a desk without fear of being chased away. The teacher, Ms. Raymond, an older woman with eyes that missed nothing, asked them to write about guilt. Tori stared at the blank page until the words surfaced. Guilt is the echo of the things I did to stay alive. When she read it, she said quietly, That's not guilt, that's wisdom trying to be born. Her words stayed with him longer than any sermon. Still, prison had its tests. Rumors spread fast like mold. Some inmates mocked his voice, his face, the way he held himself. One day graffiti appeared on the bathroom wall. 4047 belongs nowhere. He stared at it until a guard barked for him to move. That night he tore a strip from his bedsheet, wrote across it with stolen pen ink, Belonging is overrated. He taped it inside his locker as a silent reply. In the second year, the facility started a peer counseling program. The same guard who once called him Ghost now handed him a clipboard. You've got a calm way about you, the man said. See if you can stop these kids from killing each other. Tori sat across from inmates younger than he had been when Pike found him. Their stories were echoes of his own. Abandonment, anger, hunger. For the first time he didn't feel cursed by his past. He felt useful. Helping others changed him more than freedom ever could. The counselor noticed. You ever think about college? She asked. He laughed. They don't take people like me. People like you? She repeated. You mean survivors? He didn't answer, but her question cracked something open. When parole hearings came, his record spoke for itself. No infractions, completed courses, letters from staff. But the board wasn't convinced. Why should we believe you'll stay clean? The chairman asked. Tori met his eyes. Because for the first time I understand what I want. Not revenge, not escape, just purpose. They gave him a date. Release pending employment. He had 6 months to find proof that someone would hire him. The news spread through the wing. Calder, now back on transfer, slapped his shoulder. "Guess you made it, pretty boy." Tori smiled. "Guess I did." The final days crawled. He packed his few possessions, the notebook, a worn Bible someone had left behind, and the mirror shard he'd carried for years. When the officer came to escort him out, he paused at the threshold of his cell. "This place tried to make me smaller," he said softly. "It failed." Outside the gates, sunlight hit him like forgiveness. He stood for a long moment just breathing until a bus rumbled past. The driver honked. "You getting on or staring all day?" Tori smiled. "Both." He climbed aboard, the city skyline rising in the distance, familiar yet new. Every mile between the prison and the bridge felt like a lifetime closing. He pressed the mirror shard to the window, catching his reflection and the sky behind it, two halves of the same truth. The road bent east toward the river, and he whispered the same word he'd spoken the night of his arrest. "Tomorrow." But this time it wasn't a plea. It was a promise. Freedom didn't roar this time. It hummed quietly through the bus windows, carried on the wind that whipped past Tori's face as he rode toward the city he once ran from. The skyline shimmered in the distance like a promise he hadn't yet earned. He stepped off the bus with $30, a half-filled notebook, and no one waiting. But for the first time that emptiness felt like space to build. The city hadn't changed. It still smelled of rain and exhaust, still moved too fast for lost souls to keep up. Yet somehow he no longer felt lost. The same streets that once hit him now guided him forward. His parole officer found him a bed in a halfway house and a cleaning job at a small diner. The work was menial but the rhythm steady, the clang of plates, the hiss of coffee machines, the sound of people living ordinary lives. Tori watched, learned, listened. Every night he wrote new goals in his notebook. Day 1, keep the job. Day 7, save $5. Day 30, find something of my own. He kept each promise to himself. When his shift ended, he swept the floor and lingered to watch the customers talk over steaming mugs. It fascinated him. The calm that came from something as simple as tea. Not the drink itself but the pause it created. A few minutes of peace in a city that never stopped. He began brewing tea for coworkers after hours, experimenting with blends made from cheap leaves and dried herbs. "You missed your calling," laughed an old cook named Benny. "You could open a shop with this." The joke rooted itself in Tori's mind. A shop. A place that belonged to him. Not an alley, not a cell. 6 months later, he rented a closet-sized corner inside a laundromat. He painted the walls pale green, built a counter from scrap wood, and hung a small sign that read "Tomorrow's" in shaky letters. He didn't need much, just water, leaves, and hope. First, no one stopped. People hurried past, skeptical of a tea stand run by a stranger with a calm voice and tired eyes. But Tori never chased them. He stood with quiet patience, greeting each passerby the same way. "Tea for your tomorrow?" The phrase caught on before the tea did. A delivery driver tried it once, then came back the next day. A student told her friends. A nurse from the nearby hospital started bringing entire night shifts. In 3 months he broke even. In 6 he hired a helper. A teenager from the shelter who reminded him too much of himself. "Don't call me boss," Tori said. "Just learn everything and build your own." Word spread faster than he expected. Local blogs wrote about the tea stand that felt like therapy. Someone snapped a photo of him smiling behind the counter and posted it with the caption, "He sells calm." Within a year, he moved from the laundromat to his own storefront. The sign stayed the same, "Tomorrow's tea." Success didn't arrive in a storm. It arrived in steady footsteps. Every cup poured was a memory rewritten. Every smile an act of rebellion against the life that once tried to silence him. Still, on quiet nights he felt the ghosts. The bridge. The cells. The faces that shaped him through cruelty and chance. He learned not to chase them away but to thank them silently. Each wound had become part of his map. A journalist came one afternoon, notebook ready. "Your story's unusual," she said. "No investors, no family, no marketing, just word of mouth. What drives you?" Tori wiped his hands on his apron. "Tomorrow drives me," he said. "People think it's a day. It's really a choice." The article went viral. Within weeks, lines wrapped around the block. A venture group offered to franchise the brand. Tori hesitated, afraid expansion might steal the soul of what he built. But the dream was larger than fear. He accepted with one rule written into every contract. Each shop must hire at least one person who's been forgotten. By the second year, Tomorrow's Tea had 10 branches across the city. The profits went back into shelters and halfway houses, the same kind that once gave him a bed. One evening, standing inside the first shop, he looked around at walls painted the same green as that old laundromat corner. His employees laughed over spilled milk. The smell of cinnamon and steam filled the air. For the first time, he let himself smile without reservation. Benny, the cook who'd once teased him, dropped by unannounced. "You did it, kid," he said, slapping Tori's shoulder. "You built tomorrow." "Not yet," Tori replied. "Tomorrow's still coming." When Benny left, Tori locked up and walked outside. The streetlights shimmered off puddles from a recent rain. Across the glass window, he saw his reflection layered over the glowing sign. For a heartbeat, he saw not just the man he'd become but every version before him. The baby in the box, the boy with the tin cup, the ghost in the cell. He whispered to them all, "We made it." The wind carried the words down the street, where a passerby stopped to read the shop's slogan. "Tea for your tomorrow," she said aloud, smiling. "Nice." Tori turned off the lights and pocketed the key. He didn't know that miles away another man, gaunt, older, haunted, was staring at a faded photo on a shelter bulletin board. The headline read, "From Streets to Success." The man behind Tomorrow's Tea. Raymond Pike recognized the eyes instantly. He leaned closer to the photo, trembling, disbelief turning into something darker than regret. "Tomorrow," he whispered. "You found your tomorrow without me." For the first time in decades, Pike cried. Back in the city, unaware of the storm about to rise, Tori walked home beneath a sky washed clean by rain. He passed a vendor closing up for the night and dropped a few bills into his cup. "Good luck," Tori said. The man looked up, startled. "Thanks, brother." "You too." Tori smiled. "Already have it." He kept walking, his reflection following in each shop window like a shadow that finally belonged to the light. Success had a sound, the hiss of tea, the soft murmur of customers, the gentle chime of a door that never stayed closed for long. 4 years, that was the rhythm of Tori's world. He'd built peace from noise, purpose from ashes. But peace, like steam, never lasted forever. It began on an ordinary afternoon. The café was crowded, the scent of honey and mint drifting through the air. Tori moved behind the counter, pouring tea with practiced calm, when a security guard whispered, "There's a man outside asking for you. Says his name's Pike." The cup in Tori's hand trembled. For a second he thought he'd misheard. "What did you say?" "Pike. Looks rough. Says you'll know him." The name split time in two. The bridge, the rain, the bottle all came rushing back. He wiped his hands and stepped outside. Raymond Pike stood beneath the awning, rain sliding down his face like penance. His coat hung in tatters, his eyes dull but searching. He looked smaller than memory, as if regret had carved him hollow. "Tomorrow," Pike croaked. "You remember me?" Tori studied him for a long moment. "I remember the man who found me," he said quietly, "and the man who tried to keep me. I never meant to." "You did what you knew," Tori interrupted. "That's what I've told myself all these years." Pike reached into his pocket, pulling out a folded newspaper clipping, the same one from the shelter board, edges frayed. "I saw this. Had to see if it was true." "It is." "You got big," Pike murmured, voice breaking. "Bigger than I ever did. You did what I couldn't." Tori felt anger stir, then fade. Time had already done its punishment. "What do you want from me, Raymond?" The old man's shoulders sagged. "Just to say I'm sorry." Rain filled the silence between them. Customers inside watched through the glass as the successful man faced his ghost. Finally Tori nodded toward the door. "Come in. Have a cup of tea." Pike hesitated. "You'd let me in after everything?" "I learned something about forgiveness," Tori said. "It's not a gift to you, it's freedom for me." Inside, warmth replaced the storm. Tori poured 2 cups, steam curling like memory itself. Pike's hand shook as he lifted his. "Never thought I'd drink from real China again," he whispered. "Neither did I," Tori said. They spoke for an hour about nothing and everything. Pike confessed what Tori already knew. The bottles, the guilt, the years he'd spent haunted by a name that wasn't his. When he finally rose to leave, Tori stopped him. "You don't owe me anything. Just live better if you can." Pike nodded, tears shining in the lines of his face. "You're a better man than I ever was." After he left, the cafe felt heavier and lighter all at once. Closure wasn't loud. It was quiet, like forgiveness whispered through steam. Days later, another visitor arrived. A couple in their 60s, dressed too carefully for comfort. The woman clutched a purse as if it might anchor her. The man's eyes were full of recognition and shame. "Mr. Miller?" she asked softly. "Are you our child?" Tori froze. The name Miller was a door he'd closed before it ever opened. "Who told you where to find me?" "The man from the shelter," the father said. "He said you were alive. Successful." "Alive," Tori repeated, the word heavy with meaning. "That's new to you?" Lydia Miller stepped forward. "We were young. We were scared. The doctor said that I was different," Tori finished. "So you threw me away." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "We made a mistake that night we never stopped regretting." David Miller's voice cracked. "If there's any mercy left in you, just let us see who you became." Tori studied them. Their trembling hands, their fear of rejection from the child they'd rejected first. He thought of Pike, of Daniels, of everyone who'd shaped his scars into strength. "I became someone who doesn't need you to suffer," he said quietly. "But I also don't need you to stay." They lowered their eyes. Lydia whispered, "We just wanted forgiveness." "I already gave it," Tori said. "The moment I stopped letting your choices define me." He turned toward the counter, filled 2 cups, and placed them in front of them. "Drink. You'll taste what you lost." They drank in silence. When they rose to leave, Lydia touched his arm. "You look like peace," she said. Tori smiled faintly. "Peace took work." Outside, rain began again, softer this time. The doorbell chimed as they stepped out into it. Through the window, he watched them disappear into the city's blur. 2 ghosts returning to the fog that made them. Later that evening, the cafe was quiet. Tori sat by the window, the city glowing beyond, and opened his notebook one last time. He wrote, "They left me in the garbage and I grew roots there. They called me broken and I learned to bend toward light. Tomorrow isn't a day. It's a decision." He closed the notebook, slid it beneath the counter, and turned off the lights. The reflection in the window showed a man both young and old, shaped by every storm he'd survived. He whispered, "You made it," to the image staring back. From the street, the sign glowed through the rain. "Tomorrow's tea." A passerby stopped, reading the words aloud. "Tea for your tomorrow," she murmured. Tori smiled from the shadows. "It's already here." He locked the door, stepped into the drizzle, and walked toward the bridge where everything began. The city hummed around him, not as noise but as music he finally understood. At the water's edge, he scattered a handful of old tea leaves into the current. "For the ones who couldn't stay," he said. The leaves floated away, each one catching a shimmer of streetlight like tiny lanterns on the dark river. He watched until they vanished, then turned back toward the life he had built from the ground up. For the first time, the word tomorrow didn't mean hope or escape. It meant home.